lost all control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. In my heart, I can't let go, I'm breaking apart, controlling me, controlling me. Well, I'm doing well. How you guys doing tonight? Happy bedtime stories time? Welcome to the show. This is the Paranormal Portal Bedtime Stories From Beyond. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. And I just saw It's What You Make It to say, hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. Well, I'm doing good. I can only speak for me, but I'm sure everyone else is doing okay too. Just because that's how we roll up here in the portal. But good to see everybody piling in. Great to see you guys. I guess I don't have to compete against GOT anymore. Hey, Duke, good to see you. Got a bunch of people in here. Let's take a peek and just see what's going on here. All right, so Armand Adams is in here. Black Tree, which is Julia's in here. Duke's in here. It's What You Make It is up in the house. Jess Smink is in here. Ken Christensen, Many Musings, Michael Holtz, I'm in here, Renee Harvey, Renee Cruz, good to see you both, and Rivers and Suzanne Lucero O'Brien. And that's what I got on the list. I don't know if that's comprehensive and complete, but it's all I got. Let me just see. Pat Studio is in here. Hey, Pat, you got no audio. Everybody else hear me? Can you guys hear me? Let me know in the chat if you would, please. Pat Studios got no audio, but everything looks like it's good here. Okay, perfecto. Suzanne says perfecto. I don't know why you don't have audio, Pat. I don't know why I'm even talking to you because you got no audio, but you can hear. Good. Okay, thank you. Loud and clear. Good. Yes, yes. I hope you get that audio sorted. It's working. I'm just making making signs. So in case he's looking at the screen going, hey, I'm not got any sound. It's not us. All right. So there we go. I did all the basic sign language I know as far as that, but, I don't know what else to do, but I hope you guys are all set because, well, it's time for bed. All right, and I see Deb came in and Nick is in here. Good to see you guys. Any other names pop up? Armand Adams is in here. Good sound. Thank you. So I don't know. I'm not sure why Pat Studio's got no audio, but I hope you got it sorted. I hope you got it figured out. Oh, Julie hurt her knee. Sorry to hear that, Julia, but it's time for bed, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. Just prop your leg up and relax, because I'll do the heavy lifting from here on out. This is what I get paid for, you know. So anyway, Nick says you'll now be known as Wounded Knee. Oh, for sure. Okay, I'm just looking at the chat. Everything looks good. Elevate. Yes, good idea. Elevate the knees. I've had many knee surgeries, and elevation was key. Terrible. I shredded my knee really good when I was young, and had nothing but problems with it ever since. But anyway, enough about me. Now this is about the portal, and I got bedtime stories lined up for you. But yesterday I pulled up this really long one, and I was like, nope. That was like in the end of the show, towards the end of the show, and I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to read this one tonight, because it would have been a long show. But I'm going to read it tonight for you guys, so I hope you don't mind. And it is really a significantly long story. I hope I can do this okay. Let me just see. Wait. I may not be able to read it anyway. Oh, you know what? It's one of those research ones. I can't read it anyway. Looks like a lot of great narrative, but nope, I'm not touching this. They just, and the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, is sometimes you find these ghost stories that are submitted in research format. So while there are amazing things that they find, and good findings, and they document their research and all of that, it just really is not good for a story show. You know, it just reads like reading a cereal box. You know, it's like, oh, great. So I'm going to skip that and just pull up a whole batch of new ones for you, because I can't bring you a long, boring story. That's just, it's not going to retain viewership. I'm going to lose you, I'm afraid, if I try to pull that off. So let's see. I got a bunch more pulled up now, so let me get on these. First one's coming out of California, ladies and gentlemen, and so this person thinks that they're dealing with a poltergeist, and I'm curious to see what this is going to read like, because now, truth be told, I don't read these stories before the show. I'm reading them cold with you guys, so I have no idea what I'm going to be reading until I read it. But, you know, a lot of times people use the term poltergeist about the same way that they use demon. It's just like, oh, if it feels negative, it's demon. If it moves stuff, it's poltergeist. And I don't think that that's accurate. I don't think that that's a fair summation of it. But then again, people hear these terms and they think, well, if it's a ghost that's causing noise, it must be a poltergeist, because that's what a poltergeist is noisy ghost. And maybe strictly speaking, they would be right. But poltergeist activity is usually way off the charts. It's like really profound kind of activity. It's not just a light, my cereal bowl moved, oh my God, it must be a poltergeist. It's like, oh my God, the dining room table just threw itself against the wall and now the cupboards are opening and shutting. That's more like poltergeist speed, and maybe that's a dramatization, but you get what I'm saying. The amount of activity is just way off the charts. It's really profound. They're very rare though too. Poltergeist hauntings are in my opinion very rare. So they don't come up a whole lot that you see a bona fide poltergeist haunting. There can be active haunts, and those are certainly not any walk in the park either. And I'm not meaning to demean any other types of haunting, but a poltergeist haunting is rivaled in phenomena only by a true demonic haunting. Like a truly demonic haunting is going to have just really powerful bad stuff going on, and poltergeist haunts are usually just really wild and crazy with activity, but not necessarily bad. They're just, I don't know, they're almost like a force of nature, for lack of a better term. But there are active haunts that move things and bug people and can create terrifying situations, but they're not necessarily demonic nor poltergeist. So just a little bit of clarification. So let's see what's going on in California. All right, I'm going to lean in a little bit. All right. As you know, I recently wrote a story about my experience in my brother's old apartment last summer. I didn't know that, but okay. This time, it's not me who's experiencing things, it is my brother. And it's in his new apartment, just blocks away from the one where I experienced what may have been his landlady's dad's spirit. Oh, I think we just read this one, the other story just the other night. We think that this new one in his new apartment is a poltergeist, but we're not quite sure. Hopefully some of you can help explain this. Let's start with what my brother calls his bed scare. This happened to him about 2 weeks ago, and he'd been through a pretty busy day with his job and decided to play all the day's events back through his mind over sleep. And as he was lying in bed, he felt the hair stand up on his arms and the back of his neck, and he started having feelings that he was no longer alone. Then, before he knew it, he felt something creep up from the end of his bed and lie down next to him. He froze in terror, and he could actually feel its breathing in his ear and feel it moving around. Oh, God, that's got to be horribly creepy. And then he got up enough courage to tell it to leave. And after a few seconds after he did that, the breathing in his ear stopped, and he no longer felt that he wasn't alone, and the whole atmosphere seemed to shift back to normal. Some other poltergeist-like activity actually started occurring pretty much 4 days later, and he came home from work and found that all the pillows on his couch had been set down on the ground, all lined up in a really neat row. And he also found that his lamps and lights were on, as well as his ceiling fan in his room. And he told me that he makes sure that everything is picked up and turned off before he goes to work. And he's very sure that he turned everything off and picked everything up that morning. The same thing happened the next day and then suddenly stopped. Another mirror thing was that he would be sitting down eating dinner in his living room watching television, and the TV would just shut off. And it would be off for a minute or two, and then it would turn back on. This happened several times, and he made sure that no one shorted a breaker or anything. And one night, when this happened, he finally got so mad that he said loudly, "Turn it back on, please." He told me that not even a second later he said that. The TV did turn back on. All of the activity ceased for about 2 weeks until just 2 days ago when he had another bed scare, and it happened the same way the first one did. I was just wondering if any of you had any idea what this is, and we think that it might be a poltergeist created by his tension and stress and negative energy, but we're not sure. I don't think so. I think what I would be concerned about, I guess, is that something that they're bringing along with them in these moves is perhaps got some kind of attachment to it. I don't know. I don't remember the original story or how the phenomenon relates from one place to the other, but it seems to me that it may not have been his landlady's dead father or whatever. It might have been something he had brought with him all along. Again, I don't think that that's poltergeist at all. I don't think that activity would, in my mind, qualify as a poltergeist. Now, I don't claim to be an expert. I'm just an enthusiast, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to be way over the top. It's certainly profound activity, but then again, it seems for the most part to just be a presence. That brings up an important point. Tonight, I had I got a message from a listener, and it was in a discussion group that I'm in, and the person's asking about if things are moved around and noises and stuff, isn't that meant to scare people and to weaken them? And while it can be, it's certainly those kind of things, those kind of tactics can be used to make people frightened and make them weak by virtue of surrender. And those tactics can be utilized by dark beings. They are also, it doesn't mean that they have to be dark beings that are doing it. It can just be some entity is trying desperately to reach out to make contact. could be the entity is stuck and just wants help desperately. I mean, if you consider a haunting from the eyes of the spirit, this is what it might look like. It might look like that suddenly you find yourself in this home, and you may or may not recognize the home, but you're in this home, and you may or may not understand what's going on to some degree, but suddenly people come into your home and they set up their furniture there, and you don't really know why. You don't really understand what the hell's going on. Why are these people doing this? And so you might get upset from time to time and move something, or perhaps you see these people come and go and you're like, wait a minute, I think I've died. And what do I do? How do I get some attention? I need some help. And nobody hears me. I'm yelling and screaming and nobody's answering me. What's going wrong? And so you try to create events that at least get the person to notice that you're there, because you want so desperately to get their attention, to try to figure out a way to communicate with them. So it may be moving things, it might be hiding things, it might be whatever to get noticed. And what my response was is, so it doesn't necessarily have to be negative. That, in my opinion, 90 some percent of hauntings are not negative hauntings. They're just a presence. And they may either be invested in the location, like that was their home, that was, an important place in their life, and so that's where they're lingering, or they might be stuck. They didn't, they missed their opportunity to cross, or didn't realize what was going on and need help. But what I advised the person was to perhaps have a conversation. I acknowledge you're here. I'm acknowledging your presence, and I understand that you're here. Now, you are welcome to be, if indeed this is the case. If a person is okay with the haunting, just I know that you're here, but if you're kind, loving, good, and mean no harm to either myself or my family, then you're welcome to stay. If you don't do this, and this, things that have happened that are bugging you, and then set up a question that maybe they can answer somehow. So if you have an entity that's already moving things, maybe ask the question, like, if you are stuck and need help crossing over, can you please, and make it specific, like put a pen on a specific place and say, if you need help crossing over, I want you to remove this pen from this location. Make it turn a different direction or roll off or whatever, but this will let me know I need to find you help. And that will be an opportunity then to maybe assist something that's desperately wanting to go home, desperately needing to go home. It doesn't need to be there. And so just, as you're examining a haunting, you got to kind of look at it from all possibilities. Now, it could be something dark. It could be something evil. But if it is dark and evil, and you say, if you need help crossing over, move this pen, the last thing they're going to do is move that pen. They don't want somebody coming in that might be kicking them out. So that pen's going to stay put. But if the pen moves, then you'll know that it's sincerely a spirit that needs some help. And you can decide whatever kind of test you want to use, but that's certainly one method you can use, because sometimes spirits don't understand or are not capable of leaving EVPs, or not leaving EVPs that make sense. Sometimes they're not able to, communicate in any other way. Like, an old idea was to leave, an old chalkboard and a piece of chalk in a room, and the spirit was supposed to write out their response. Well, if they don't have the energy to do that, they're screwed, So something light, just a light, small object that if it's moved, it will indicate to you that they need help. It's just an idea. I don't know. It's just worth a shot. But I think that a lot of times in hauntings and a lot of times in spiritual experiences, people automatically jump to, oh no, it's got to be evil. And that's just not fair. It's not, I don't think it's fair or right. I think that, if a haunting is bothering you and you need it gone, then get somebody in there to get rid of it, or try to cleanse it yourself, but whatever. If you're not really troubled by the fact that if something kind and loving is there, then lay down the ground rules, give it the rules. And also to ask a question in a method that they could probably do, because you've already been observing this kind of behavior before. Like, if you already have a spirit that's moving things around, then give them something to move that has significance. Move this if you need help crossing over. And then if they do, then contact somebody that specializes in that. And you can certainly contact us because we have several people that specialize in crossing spirits and helping them. So those are all options, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to throw that out there because I think that, it's important to share those kind of things and ideas. And if you have ideas of your own, please let me know. I'd love to hear them. So, okay. Oh, Robin says, I've only seen poltergeist activity once about 15 years ago. My friend Scott and I came in at the end of the activity, and it took a week for it to push a penny across the windowsill. Wow. There you go. But again, I don't know if that's indeed poltergeist, Robin, just for the record. I think that's probably just a presence, and clearly not a very energetic one at that, but it's probably a benign presence if that's, all it's doing. But yeah, cool. And Lewis loves Aaron Goodwin the most. All right, so there you go. We got that going for us. All right, let's see what's next here. The next story is coming out of California, ladies and gentlemen. This one has an image on here, but it just shows a hole in the wall. So let me just see what the story says. Okay. My best friend's house, his name is Brandon, was rebuilt in the 1800s after a fire. And in that fire burnt a family of 3 people. A mother, a father, and a little girl. Oh, so tragic. I love to go to Brandon's house and play with his Ouija board, and we never picked up anything before until now. It was my cousin Amber and I and our friend Brandon, and we were at his house, of course, and he brought out his homemade Ouija board. It was cardboard with letters from another Ouija board glued on it, and it was laminated. Okay. So you're introducing another Ouija board's energy into this one. That could be dangerous. We placed our fingers on it and asked, is anyone there? And at first, absolutely nothing happened. And I had said, why are we even doing this again? We asked again, is there anyone here? And yet again, nothing. So Amber and Brandon took their fingers off the board. And I was bored, so I tried again, is there anyone there? And it started moving slightly. It didn't give an answer, it just started moving. So I told Amber and Brandon to put their fingers on again, and we asked, can you move again? And nothing happened. I tried it alone and said, are you there? And it went to yes, very slowly. I tried another question, boy or girl, and it only spelled out G-I-R and then stopped. And I said, a girl? And she replied, yes. I kept asking questions, what's your name? And this time she spelled out the whole Anatoie? A-N-N-A-T-O-I-E. Or Anatole. And I said, that's a beautiful name. And how old are you? And she said 9. I continued asking questions such as, were you in a fire? Yes. Why didn't you answer before? Brandon. Brandon? I don't like him. Why? He slams the door. Is it too loud? He's messy. I started laughing and asked, where are you? Behind the door. And I was shocked at this answer. Stupidly, I got up and looked behind this door, well, in his closet, and I went back and I can't see you. Not the closet. I got kind of scared after that, so Amber started using it to, do you like me? No. Do you like Nadia? Yes, I do. Well, Amber continued to ask questions, and she said she was a demon sent from hell to kill Brandon, and said my soulmate's name is Benjamin. Now, I haven't talked to her since Brandon's board got thrown out accidentally, but every time I go in his room, I wave hi and say hello to Anatole. Anatole? I don't know how you pronounce that. These words aren't exact. I just remember some of the things she said because they affected me, and they were either really funny or really scary, but we did write these questions and answers down so you can remember. And there's an addendum to the story. And it says, it was Friday and I was sleeping over at my friend Brandon's house. And it was after our Ouija encounter with Anatole, I don't know. After a while, I was getting bored, so I went to the living room to get my backpack. And while I was looking through my backpack, I kept hearing noises from the kitchen. And I thought it was one of his cats. He has 5. And after about the 3rd time I heard something, I went into the kitchen and I saw a woman with her face half burnt in the kitchen facing away from the stove. I ran to Brandon's room and I hadn't told him what happened, and he said he had heard crying, so I told him what I saw, and he said, we all see her all the time. And the next thing we know, there's another noise, so we say, if anyone's here, please let us know. Well, nothing happened, so I said, they're scared. They wouldn't dare do anything with both of us here. And I said that because I hear if you provoke a spirit, they'll do something. They'll do something. It couldn't have been his family because they were in West Virginia, so we were all alone. All of a sudden, we heard banging on the ceiling, and the mirror above his bed fell down, not even an inch from where he was sitting, almost hitting his head. We went quiet for a minute, then started smelling something burning. We saw smoke from under his bed, so he moved it, and then we saw the floor smoking. After the smoke cleared, there was a tiny triangle on his hardwood floor, maybe 2 inches. We ran out of that room so fast and ended up calling someone to take us to my house. I don't know. That's a bizarre one. That's a bizarre one for sure. Huh. Hard to know. All right, the next one's from Florida, ladies and gentlemen. Let's check out Florida, shall we? I was around 13 years old at this time and was living in my grandma's house at the time. My grandfather had died when my mom was 13, so I was unfortunate to never have met him. I went to middle school in Palm City, and the school didn't start until 9 o'clock, so I was left alone for a couple of hours in the morning, and it wasn't until one morning I was getting ready for school, and I walked into the kitchen for a glass of juice, and I placed my glass on the counter, and I happened to look up through the window that looks into the hallway, and I was startled to see a man looking back at me. Naturally, he was standing 2 feet from me. I dropped the juice and ran out of the kitchen, and I noticed that I didn't hear any footsteps, and I turned around, and there was no one there. The man had just vanished. I called my mom up at work and told her, and she said that it was nothing and to go to school. Oh, my God. Later, I told my grandma, and she said that she was not surprised that I saw him. After questioning her, she told me that my grandfather died in the house, which he had built. And she had seen him many times as if he was watching over his family, and I only saw him once after that. He was standing in the same hallway, looking almost sad, and then vanished. And it was the day I moved out. Huh. Well, that's kind of a beautiful story, actually. All right, the next one's from Arizona, ladies and gentlemen. Heading over to Arizona. And if you've got something you want to talk about, by all means, 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500 is the number. So, all right. All right, Arizona. I never really had a paranormal experience that was so completely personal before this, but this morning, the strangest thing happened. I slept over at my boyfriend's apartment last night and woke up this morning by myself, and he had already left for work, and I was waking up to get ready for work. His bathroom is in the same room as his bedroom, and I was in the bedroom about to do my makeup when I heard a soft whisper. I looked over by the bed, but nobody was there. I noticed the window was open, so I walked to it and looked out. No one was around, and I thought I was just hearing things and went back to the mirror, and then I heard it again, only it was louder, and I was almost positive it was saying my name. Then about 10 seconds later, I hear it again, only it stretched out a little more, so I was sure it was saying my name, and by this point, I had goosebumps. I wasn't sure if I was going crazy or if someone or something was actually saying my name, and then it said it again, only a bit quieter this time. I just took my stuff and left the apartment and went to work early. I have no idea what had just happened to me, but it was the strangest experience I have ever encountered. Does anyone have any idea of why it happened? I don't. I don't know. Too many possibilities to ponder, I guess. This story's coming from Indiana, not too long. I need to start out by telling you that these events, that until these events, I was a complete skeptic. Other than God, if I couldn't see, I didn't believe. I do now. It was 1992 and the end of Desert Storm. My husband is in the military and at the time was still in Kuwait. So being lonely, I took our 2.5-year-old daughter, Lizzie, and moved back home with my family. My mom, younger sister, and brother lived in an older yet well-established part of our hometown, and I thought it was the perfect place to wait for my husband. That was until my daughter made a new friend. One evening, my mom and I were in the kitchen preparing dinner, and my daughter was playing at the table, and for some reason I turned to look at her, and she was just staring down the short hall to an open door at the end, and this was my sister Lisa's room. Lizzie was shaking like a leaf, and she was literally white as a ghost. Then she just started crying, and my first thought was that she had some kind of seizure or something. And then as she sat on my lap, she kept pointing down the hall crying, "Tell her to leave. I don't like her." My mom and I looked at her and each other kind of dumbfounded, and we knew she could not be talking about my sister. She loved her Aunt Sissa. And this went on for about 15 minutes until my mom and I promised Lizzie we would make her leave. After settling Lizzie down with my brother Lance in the living room, we began our search for what could have been the reason for her apparent fright. We didn't find anything or anybody. We'd more or less forgotten the incident until about a month had gone by, and once again my mom were in the kitchen, and this time Lizzie was in the living room playing, alone, or so we thought. I heard her carrying on a one-sided conversation, yet it sounded as if she were talking to somebody. I went around the corner just to peek in to see if things were okay, and she was sitting on the couch with her head turned to the left, talking as if someone was sitting next to her. And I asked her who she was talking to, and her reply was, "The girl from Sissa's room." I went completely cold. I went in, picked her up, and quickly went back into the kitchen. This isn't the end. This continued for about 6 months, and she would have conversations and play with the girl from Sissa's room. My mom tried to convince me it was just an imaginary friend, common for children, but I have my doubts. Then one day, it just stopped, and she never mentioned her again. My husband came back, and we went home, and things were finally back to normal, and Lizzie never mentioned the girl again, but she came back, and I will leave that for another time. And another child. Huh. Interesting cliffhanger. Now I gotta know. So I'm going to pull up the next story that this person submitted. Okay, so it says, first of all, I'd like to apologize to all who read my first story and have yet been waiting for the rest of the story. And to those who have not, you may want to go back and read the other one in order to completely understand this one. Unfortunately, my husband was deployed in Iraq in November, so between work and raising 8 children, 8 children? Oh my God. This woman's a superhero. There's not been any time to sit or write or anything, so my apologies, and here's the rest of the story. As you remember, at age 2, my daughter started talking to someone she just called the girl. When my husband came back from Kuwait and we went back home, it did continue for a couple of months, and although everyone said it was just an imaginary friend, I really did know better. Then it just stopped out of the blue. I thought it was all over, and a year later we had a beautiful little boy, Logan. 2 years later, he was playing in his bedroom, only about 10 feet down the hall from where I was in the kitchen, and I could hear him playing and jabbering like boys do. So I was really unconcerned, and then I heard him start to giggle. And it's not a little laugh, like he thought his toys were fun, but it was an all-out laugh attack, like he was being tickled or thought someone was extremely funny. I went in to check on him, and he was sitting on the floor surrounded by his tractors, which he loved more than anything, so I thought maybe he was just having fun, and he looked up at me with his big blue eyes and seemed just fine, and I went back to the kitchen, and then I heard him start giggling again, so now my curiosity was piqued. I snuck down the hall and put my head around the corner of the room just to see if I could catch what was going on, and he was lying on his tummy with his hands on his chin, just looking towards the wall and laughing. And I went in the room and said, "Logan," and he looked at me. I got down on the floor and put him in my lap and asked him what was so funny, and he pointed towards the wall and said, "Gil." I knew this was his 2-year-old version of the word girl. My blood ran cold, and my first thought was, oh my God, she's back. That night I told my husband about what happened, and being a skeptic, the one who marked Liz's experience as her imagination, he just laughed it off, and I tried to make him see that there was no logical reason for both of our children to talk about a girl. It continued, just like our daughter, Logan continued to talk to this girl and to play with her, but now everyone in our families thought I had lost it by being so freaked out. And then one day, my niece made them believe as well. My brother and sister-in-law lived just a few blocks away. Lori, my sis-in-law, often came over during the day, so Logan and her daughter, Mayan, could play. And Mayan is about 4 months older than Logan and could already speak very clear, concise sentences. We were sitting in the kitchen talking, and the kids were in the backyard, and we were sitting by the patio doors watching them. In the backyard was surrounded by a 6-foot wooden privacy fence. No way for anyone to get in or out except through the kitchen and out the doors that we were sitting in front of. Logan and Mayan were playing around the sandbox, looking like they were having a good old time, and then Mayan fell. She started crying, and we opened the doors and went out, and Lori picked her up and asked if she was okay, and she said that she wanted to go home. Lori tried to convince her that she was okay and she could keep playing. Mayan kept insisting that she wanted to leave, so Lori asked her why, and she said the girl pushed her and is very mean. We just looked at each other, and she could only be talking about Logan's girl. I could see Lori was now a believer. Like Liz, this continued until he was almost 3 years old, and then also like Liz, one day it just stopped. Now he's 14 and doesn't remember any of it. Since then, my husband and I have had 6 more children, and the girl has not yet made another appearance. 6 more kids, wow. Whoa. With each child at around the age of 2, I have made it a point to keep out a very close eye and ear for her. Our youngest child, a son, Layden, just turned 2 in February, so we'll see what happens. Wild. That's pretty crazy stuff. Gotta believe those kids, ladies and gentlemen. They see stuff we do not. I don't know. It's not that it's impossible for a kid to have an imaginary friend, but there's a difference between making up a conversation with somebody and when they're actually having a conversation with somebody. So, I don't know. I think that those are definitely worth watching and being careful with. Not that I want to scare anybody. I think many kids have just imaginary friends, and it's especially common in kids that don't have siblings close to their age or something. They just make up somebody to play with. I mean, that's not abnormal at all, but I don't know. There's just a difference in the way a child would interact, I'm sure, with another being or with their own imagination. Kids are creative and all, but for a young child to have dialogues that are only one-sided, that to me means that they're getting answers from somewhere. I don't know. Just my 2 cents, but I so many times we get to these stories. I'm really, really pleased that parent paid attention to what was going on. Most parents just dismiss those kind of things, and I think that shuts off something emotionally in the children that are dealing with these things alone. So I think it's important to at least listen to the kids and try to help them rationalize what's going on. All right, so the next one is, we got a bunch of you in tonight. It's a big difference from last night's Game of Thrones marathon. It's okay. We got the replays. I'm not wounded that you guys chose Game of Thrones. I understand completely, and you can always come and watch the portal whenever you have time. But it's now, I think it's now done, right? Game of Thrones is over. So whatever happened. I have no idea. I've never watched a Game of Thrones. I think I watched the first one, and it was like, honestly, it was like softcore porn. It was like, it was racy as hell. I was like, whoa. But I never have watched the rest of them, so I don't know what's going on. So let's see what's going on here. North Carolina is the state this time, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it is over. Yeah, okay. Got it. Thanks, Robin. So, oh my God, Deb, grandma's family was 13 kids. Grandpa's was 9 kids. Did they get together? So is it like 22 kids in one house? Oy. 11 of the 13 were girls. Wow. That must have been a handful. No offense. No offense to you ladies out there, but I've only had boy children, and boy children have been wonderful. I've heard stories from parents that have girl children, and they can be willful little things for sure. All right, so let's go to North Carolina and see what's going on there. What? Across my life, as well as across 2 countries, both of North America, U.S. and Canada, I or people in my family have had some minor run-ins with what I like to think of as ghosts. I apologize for the fact that I don't have one wildly interesting, cohesive story, but just the scattering of things. And those actually are honestly some of my favorite, are just many, many events over a period of time. One profound event, of course, is very powerful, but when it's a whole pattern of things, I think those are much more interesting. So the first one I didn't personally experience, but my parents did. And when I was 4, we moved into an old house in Pennsylvania that had previously been a funeral home. I'm so happy I was too young to appreciate this. No kidding. I don't blame you. Although the house is mostly quiet, most of my parents experienced separate experiences on our first day there. My mother at one point heard an older sounding man talking to what seemed like a young girl on the back staircase, and there was nobody there. And that night my dad woke up to see a young girl walk past their bedroom door. As I said, I was 4 and my sister was 6. As this was our first night in the new house and our rooms were upstairs, Dad was worried that we would mistakenly turn the wrong way in the dark and fall down one of the 2 staircases. So he got up and followed the girl who he thought was one of us, and said she was very young in a white nightgown, and he walked so close behind her he could have reached out and touched her, and he followed her all the way down the hall and into the bathroom, but when he flipped on the light, she was gone. He was so sure that she was real. He went and checked the adjacent rooms thinking she had somehow gotten away from him, and Dad being a dad, he always found this to be amusing, but was not in the least disturbed. And we never had any more experiences there. A few years later, I was 8, and we moved to Canada, about an hour outside of Vancouver, where Dad worked as a farmhand in exchange for a trailer to live on the property. And there have been several different farmhands over the years, and one had been run over in the driveway while working on his truck several years before. He had a wife and I believe a daughter at the time, and the trailer was really fairly small. maybe 35 feet long, and Dad slept on a fold-out couch in the living room, and my sister was in the first room, and I was in the back bedroom. And one summer night, around maybe 10:30, not long after everyone else had fallen asleep, I heard the screen door open, and now we never locked the door on the porch, but this thing was the loudest door on earth. I think it screeched when it was open and slammed shut as soon as it was let go. Dad, who was the sort of to wake up if you tiptoed and just stood quietly near his bed, was of course on the couch and in the living room, and the porch were adjacent. So I waited for him to jump up, but no. Then I heard very distinct footsteps come plodding through the house, and this sound made me think very much of work boots, and like the person wasn't trying to be quiet, just walking through like they owned the place. And I was completely freaked out by this time and hardly even breathed, curled up under the covers, and I listened as the footsteps walked from the porch to the mudroom, across the edge of the living room carpet, onto the hardwood kitchen floor, and across. And at the end of the kitchen was our refrigerator to the right of where the hallway and the rooms began, and to the left was an old wood stove. Dad had put foil on one side of the fridge to help reflect heat, and I heard it ripple as if someone was walking past. The footsteps stopped right at the entrance to my sister's room, and that was it. I heard the exact sequence repeat 2 more times across the few years that we did live there, and I believe about once a year, always in the summer. After the first time, it didn't bother me, and in fact, I actually found it comforting. I had a sense that it was the old farmhand coming in at night, checking in on his family as they slept. Here in North Carolina at my sister's house, about 10 years later, several of us who lived there had either odd experiences or feelings. The back half of the house had burned down at some point in the past, and that half always just felt really weird, like there were people watching you. And my sister used to hear the kitchen cupboards open and close at night, and her boyfriend laughed about it until he stayed over one night and heard it too. I never did, but one day I was sitting in the living room reading a Sylvia Browne book until I got myself thoroughly creeped out, and I won't say I necessarily believe she's for real or not, but how do you ever really know? But I was still worked up, so I went outside in the back porch, standing just outside the big living room window, and the cordless phone was on its charger sitting in the windowsill, and as I stood with my back to it, suddenly it turned on, and I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it was as if it was on speakerphone, a function that it never had, but it was just a dial tone. After about 15 seconds, it turned itself off. I had enough weird feelings about the house by then, so that really did it for me. And though I did actually go in, pick up the phone and say hello, I have no idea what I was expecting, although there have been occasions all throughout my life when I've heard very soft voices coming from phones even when they're hung up. But since I got no response, I grabbed my stuff and fairly well ran to the door, where I stopped and said, "Look, I'm moving in 2 weeks. Could you please leave me alone until then?" And I never had another problem at that house, even when I moved back in several years later. However, a month or so after moving, I talked to my sister and found out that we had the same odd feelings in the same places in the house, and on our own had taken to calling our roommate by virtually the same name. I called her Eleanor and she called her Ellen, while also having the sense that there was a man as well. We believed it was her husband, and that we had never seen, yet we had similar mental image of what he looked like. A later roommate also, without prodding, claimed the same areas of the house bothered him. On a side note about Sylvia Browne, like I said earlier, I really have no firm opinion, but it always struck me as strange that anytime I see her on TV or read books, her books, that things start acting up. She always makes my TV go on the fritz, and every time I see her, the reception will either go fuzzy or lose the channel entirely. And those kind of things, along with, of course, the phone acting up after the book, just got to me. Lastly, I have what my family affectionately refers to as my bathroom ghost. Granted, I'm notoriously absent-minded, but there are times and things that can't be all my fault. I don't think, at least, she, and I don't know if it's a female, but that's what I've always thought, has a fondness for temporarily stealing my things, and she follows me even on vacation. My sister and I stayed with friends for a few days in Canada, and upon leaving, I couldn't find my brush. All of a sudden, all of my stuff was kept in one backpack, so it's not like there was a lot of searching to be done, and I went all through their house, as this is a brush I've had since I was 5, and it's sentimental by now. Finally, we left, telling them just to hang on to it if they ever found it, and we left, and about an hour down the road, I reached into my backpack for something, and there it was, right in plain sight. This summer, I got sunburned and went hunting for a bottle of aloe gel that I was pretty sure was under the bathroom sink, and I live alone now in a small trailer, and the cabinet under the sink is maybe 1.5 square feet, and not all that crammed full of stuff, and plus this stuff is almost like fluorescent green and hard to miss. I dug everything out, but I couldn't find it. A few weeks later, while getting out some liquid soap to refill the dispenser, boom, there it was. And I don't recall any times other stuff in other parts of the house have gone missing, but maybe a few times a year, random items, cough, syrup, tweezers, will disappear for a short period of time. And although somewhat annoying, it makes me laugh, and I've wondered if maybe she's what people call my guide and just likes to say hi from time to time. Well, I think that's finally about it. Any thoughts on cross-country bathroom thieves or anything else? That's pretty crazy. I don't know. I don't know what to say to all that. Sounds like somebody's wanting your attention is all I can think. Just heard some weird clicking in my ears. I guess that's about it, though, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just pull up this last one. If it's real short, I'll read it. Hold on. Yeah, I can read this one. It's pretty short. Let me read it. Hold on. I'm going to close that last one so I don't end up reading it again tomorrow night. All right. So this one's coming from Arizona. This is for you, Jess. I have this friend, and he's been using drugs for a good portion of his life. And he's done so much drugs that he believed he worshipped Satan. Well, he has lived in about 4 houses in the past 3 years, and each house was haunted. And I had heard stories from some people that have been to either of his houses, but I didn't believe it. And I haven't been to any of his homes except for the most recent one. And it was about 2 a.m. and we were looking for him, and we went to his house, and he was moving out of it, so we weren't sure if he was there or not. And we pulled up, and it was dark. No lights were on, but we wanted to check anyway. And me and one of my friends stood in the driveway, and the other 2 friends I was with went to the front door, and they knocked, and no one answered. And then they noticed the door was unlocked, so they opened it and went inside. And they realized that no one was in there, so they started walking back out. And as soon as they shut the door behind them, the garage light turned on. We told them, and they went back in the house and into the garage, and no one was there. And we were really confused by this point. And then once again, we came back outside to shut the door. Only this time, as soon as they shut the door, the blinds right next to it opened as though someone were looking out at us. They stayed open that way, and the garage light stayed on until we got in the car and started driving away. Soon as we started driving, the blinds shut and the light turns off. About 30 feet up the road, there is a dark man standing on the sidewalk, watching us drive by. My headlights went over him, but he remained as dark as he first appeared, and we could not see his face. After this experience with 4 other witnesses that night that saw all the same thing, I now believed in ghosts and demons. That could very, very well be. Chemicals are tough things on the aura. The aura is believed to be our spiritual shield, our protection. It's the energy we emit. Well, people that use chemicals and are heavy drinkers or substance abusers, It's believed that those substances create disturbances in that aura and create holes. And there's a belief that the two places that, not necessarily dark spirits, but spirits that linger trying to live more life, will hang out in two places, a bar and a hospital, because those are two places that people are the most vulnerable, and from drinking or from being injured and having medicines and stuff administered because of their injuries. And so that's something I was told, God, back when I was 12, 13, I guess, by my cousin. She was explaining this stuff to me, but I don't know. I don't know if it's true or not, but I know that that's what I was told. And now I'm told it's time for the portal to close. So I hope you've enjoyed this journey into the portal. I hope you've retained all of your possessions as we exit the portal and the portal closes. I don't know. It sounds kind of dramatic. I don't even know what the hell any of that means, but it sounded good in my head for a second there. But I love you all. I hope you have a great night. I'll be back tomorrow night with more of the bedtime stories. So I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. You guys have a great night. Have a great day tomorrow, and I'll be waiting for you here at the end of the trail. Sweet dreams.